some stories hurt more because they come from people we love the most. I used to think betrayal came from strangers, from people outside your world. But I learned it often comes quietly, from the ones you invite into your heart, your home, and your daily life. The people you never question, never doubt, until it's too late. My best friend's name was Ria. We met in college when we were both 18. I remember the first time I saw her. She was standing alone in the library, trying to reach a book from the top shelf. I helped her. She thanked me. We started talking. And somehow, that small moment turned into years of friendship. Ria was the kind of person everyone liked. She was friendly, always smiling, and very easy to talk to. People trusted her quickly. She had that natural warmth, the kind that made you feel safe. We became inseparable. We studied together, ate lunch together, took long walks together. When I cried after my first breakup, she stayed with me all night. When she failed an important exam, I stayed up with her for days helping her study again. After college, we took different paths. She joined a marketing firm. I became a school teacher. But we never drifted. We talked every day, met every weekend. Our bond stayed the same. When I met Arif, she was the first person I told. I was nervous and unsure, but she smiled and said, "He sounds good for you. Calm, kind, safe." She met him 2 weeks later. We all had lunch together. I remember watching them talk. They laughed a lot. I was happy seeing them connect. I thought, how lucky I am that the man I love and the friend I love can get along so well. That lunch became dinners, then movie nights, then long drives. The three of us spent so much time together, it felt natural, comfortable. When Arif proposed to me, Ria helped him plan it. She even hid the ring in her bag and handed it to him at the right moment under the restaurant table. She cried more than I did when I said yes. At our wedding, she was my maid of honor. She helped me choose my dress, my jewelry, my makeup. She was with me for every step. On the day of the ceremony, she held my hands tightly and whispered, "You're going to be so happy." I believed her. After marriage, Ria stayed a big part of our life. She wasn't married yet, and she lived close by. She visited often. Sometimes she brought home-cooked food. Sometimes she came just to talk. She became part of our home in a way that felt normal, until it didn't. I didn't notice it at first. I didn't want to. I loved her too much to suspect her of anything. And I trusted Arif. He was quiet, respectful, always gentle with me. He never gave me a reason to worry. But slowly, things started to feel different. Ria began coming over even when I wasn't home. She'd say she was dropping off something or just needed to use my kitchen. Arif never complained. In fact, he seemed happy to see her. I tried to ignore the unease in my chest. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being silly, that it was jealousy, nothing else. But once you notice something, it becomes harder to unsee. I started noticing how Rhea dressed when she came over, simple, but more carefully put together. Lipstick that she never used to wear. Perfume that lingered in the air even after she left. I noticed how Arav talked about her. How he mentioned her in small ways during our conversations. Rhea said this, Rhea suggested that. Her name found a way into our days more than before. It wasn't wrong. Not directly. But it started to feel wrong. One evening, I came home earlier than planned. I had taken a half day at school and didn't tell anyone. When I entered the house, I found them in the kitchen. Just the two of them. He was cooking, she was cutting vegetables. They were laughing. Arav said something I couldn't hear clearly. But it made Rhea laugh loudly and hit his arm playfully. Then she looked up and saw me standing there. Her smile dropped. She looked nervous, like a child caught doing something they shouldn't. Arav looked surprised but normal. He walked toward me and kissed my forehead. "You're home early." I smiled, said nothing, and walked to the bedroom. I sat on the bed for a long time that day, thinking. My heart was not angry. It was confused and heavy. After dinner that night, I asked Arav, "Do you think Rhea spends too much time here?" He paused, looked at me, then said, "She's your best friend." Isn't this normal? Maybe it was. Or maybe it used to be. That night, I looked at Rhea's old messages. Her photos. Our college memories. I tried to remind myself of who she had been to me. The loyalty. The love. The years. Surely, I was overthinking. But my heart kept whispering that something was changing. And I was afraid to admit it. A few days later, I asked Rhea if she wanted to go out for coffee, just the two of us. She agreed. We met at our usual cafe, the one we'd gone to for years. She was cheerful. Talked about work. About her new project. But I kept watching her face. Her eyes didn't meet mine as much as they used to. After a while, I asked softly, "Rhea, are you okay?" She smiled. "Of course. Why do you ask?" I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, "You've been spending a lot of time with Arav lately." She blinked. "You mean with you both, right?" I nodded. "Mostly with him." She looked down. Then up. "Do you have a problem with that?" I said, "Should I?" Her face changed. Not angry. Not guilty. Just unsure. "I never meant for anything to feel strange," she said. "I just enjoy being around you both. It's easy. You have a good home." Arav listens. He understands. I asked her directly, "Do you like him?" There was silence. Then she whispered, "I don't want to." But the way she said it said everything. That was the moment I knew my world would not go back to what it was. I left the cafe quietly. That night, I didn't tell Arav. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't cry loudly. I just sat by the window, holding a cup of tea, watching the rain fall. My heart felt like glass pressed too tightly, ready to crack, but still pretending it could hold together. The hardest part wasn't that Ria had feelings for my husband. The hardest part was that she was the person I used to tell everything to, and now, she was the only person I couldn't talk to at all. I didn't sleep that night. I kept watching the ceiling, my fingers tightly holding the blanket. Arif was sleeping next to me, breathing softly. It was so strange how someone could be so close physically but feel so far away emotionally. The next morning, everything looked the same. The sun came through the window. The birds sang outside. Arif got ready for work like usual. He kissed my forehead before leaving. I smiled and waved like nothing had changed. But something had changed. Deep inside me, something had broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. Ria didn't call me that day. I didn't call her either. We usually messaged each other about everything, what we were eating, what time we would meet, silly jokes. But that day, there was nothing. Silence can be loud. And that silence was shouting at me. For the next few days, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, watched TV with Arif. But inside me, I was slowly falling apart. I kept asking myself, should I talk to Arif? Should I tell him what Ria had said? What if I was wrong? What if it was all just an emotional mess in my head? I didn't want to sound insecure. I didn't want him to think I was jealous. But I was. I was jealous. And I was hurt. And I was scared. Because I loved both of them. And I was losing both at the same time. A week later, Ria came to the house again. I had not invited her. She just showed up, holding a bag of sweets. "Hi," she said quietly at the door. I stared at her for a few seconds, then moved aside and let her in. She walked slowly to the kitchen and placed the sweets on the counter. "I thought you might like these," she said. I didn't answer. I just stood near the dining table, holding my breath. After a few seconds, she turned around and looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said. I didn't ask what she was sorry for. I just looked at her, and the tears started falling from my eyes without warning. She came closer, tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "I trusted you," I said, my voice shaking. "You were the one person I trusted with everything." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "I didn't plan it." "But it happened," I said. She looked down. "I never told him. I swear. I never said anything. He doesn't know." I asked her, "Do you think he feels the same?" She didn't answer. That silence hurt more than any words. I wiped my tears and said, "You need to stop coming here." She nodded slowly. "I understand." Then she picked up her bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned and looked at me one last time. "I still love you," she said. "You're my best friend." I couldn't reply. My throat was full of pain. When she left, I sat on the floor and cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the memories, for the friendship, for the trust, and for the version of life I thought I had. That evening, Arv came home and found me sitting quietly in the living room. I hadn't cooked. I hadn't done anything. He sat next to me and said, "Are you okay?" I looked at him and asked, "Do you love her?" His eyes widened. "What? Who?" "Ria." He looked shocked. "Where is this coming from?" I repeated slowly, "Do you have feelings for her?" He stood up and walked around the room like he was searching for the right answer. Then he sat back down and looked straight into my eyes. "I care about her," he said, "but not in the way you think. She's your friend. She's been around us for years. Yes, we talk. We laugh. She's nice. But I married you. I chose you. That hasn't changed." I stared at him for a long time. "But has it started to?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked away, took a deep breath, and said, "Maybe I've been too comfortable with her presence. I didn't think it would bother you." "It doesn't just bother me," I said. "It hurts me." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "Ria won't come here anymore," I said. "I asked her not to." He nodded. "That's fair." We didn't speak much that night. We went to bed in silence, lying next to each other but feeling miles apart. The next few days were quiet. No calls from Ria. No visits. Arv tried to act normal, but I could feel he was uncomfortable too. The air in the house felt heavier than before. One night, Arv sat with me at dinner and said, "Do you want me to apologize?" I shook my head. "It's not about apology. It's about boundaries." He nodded. "I'll do better." But it was not just about doing better. Something had shifted, and I didn't know if we could ever go back to how we were. One morning, I opened my phone and saw an old photo, me and Ria on a beach vacation, laughing with ice creams in our hands. I stared at it for a long time. We looked so happy. So free. So unaware of what was coming. It felt like I was grieving someone who was still alive. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter, not a text. It was from Ria. Inside was a handwritten note. Neat, careful letters, just like she used to write in college. "I'm sorry I broke something so beautiful. I never wanted this. I never meant for your home to become confusing or heavy. I loved you first, before anyone else. You were always my safe place. But sometimes, hearts make mistakes, even the ones that love the most. I will stay away. I will disappear if that's what you need. But please remember, I never stopped loving you as my friend. And I never will." I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer. I didn't reply. Because sometimes silence is the only answer left when too much has already been said. That weekend, Arv suggested we take a short trip, just the two of us. Let's go somewhere quiet, he said. We need time. Together. I agreed. We went to a small hill town nearby, walked through forests, drank tea in silence, sat near the lake and watched the sunset. We didn't talk about Ria. We didn't talk about the past. We just tried to find each other again in the spaces between. It helped. A little. But healing isn't fast. And trust doesn't return with just a weekend away. Still, I appreciated the effort. The fact that he was trying. The fact that I was trying too. We were both broken in places. But maybe we could still build something whole. The trip helped, but it didn't erase the past. When we returned home, things were quieter. Arav was more present. He asked about my day, helped with dinner, and avoided saying her name. He knew I needed space. And maybe he needed it too. But silence, even when peaceful, can also be a reminder of what's missing. I didn't cry as much anymore, but sometimes I would sit alone in the living room, holding my cup of tea, and think of the three of us. The laughter, the shared meals, the inside jokes. All of it now felt like old photographs, beautiful, but from a different life. I didn't hear from Ria after the letter. She kept her promise. She disappeared. No calls. No messages. No visits. It felt strange. For almost 12 years, she had been part of my everyday. And now, suddenly, she was a shadow. It was like a piece of my world had quietly walked away and left behind only memories and silence. One evening, while I was organizing an old cupboard, I found a small box. Inside were letters and little gifts Ria had given me over the years. A birthday card she had made by hand. A silly note she had slipped into my college notebook saying, "You'll do great on this exam. I believe in you." A pair of earrings she gave me when I got engaged to Arav. I held each one carefully. I read her words again and again. And I cried. Not because of what she had done, but because of who we had been. Because even now, with everything that had happened, I still missed her. I missed the version of her who protected me, who laughed with me, who stood by me like a second heartbeat. And I hated that now when I remembered her, I also remembered pain. That weekend, Arav sat down beside me as I folded laundry and said, "Do you want to talk?" I looked at him, surprised. About what? He sighed. About her. About us. About whatever you're holding inside. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then I said, "Do you think we'll ever be the same again?" He thought for a moment. "I don't know. But I hope we can be something even better." I smiled softly. "That's a nice thought. But it's hard." "I know," he said. "But I want to try." We talked for hours that night. About the things we had ignored. The small cracks. The moments of distance. The times we chose silence instead of truth. He admitted that maybe he had crossed a line emotionally. That maybe he had enjoyed Ria's company more than he should have. But he said, "I never loved her, Mira. I never thought about leaving you. I was careless, not cruel. And for the first time, I believed him. He wasn't a bad man. He was a human man. And humans make mistakes. That night, we held hands again. Not like lovers, not like husband and wife, but like two people who had walked through a storm and were still holding on. A few months passed. Life settled into a quieter rhythm. We went back to work. We went to the market on Sundays. We visited Ariv's parents. We laughed sometimes. We argued about silly things. Slowly, we started feeling like a team again. But even then, Ria was never far from my thoughts. I often wondered how she was. Where she was. If she had moved on. If she was okay. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated but picked up. It was Ria. Her voice was soft. Unsure. Hi. I didn't speak at first. Just listened to her breathing. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry again," she said. "I think about you every day. And I wanted you to know that I've been in therapy. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I hurt the only person who truly loved me." I took a deep breath. "I don't hate you," I said. She sounded surprised. "You don't?" "I don't," I repeated. "But I'm still hurt. And I don't know if I can ever go back to what we had." "I understand," she said. Then she added, "I'm moving to another city. For work. I'll be gone next week." There was a long pause. "Take care, Ria," I said quietly. "You too, Mira." And then she hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. I felt many things: relief, sadness, peace, loss. But above all, I felt ready to let go. Not because I didn't love her anymore, but because I needed to love myself more. That night, I told Arav about the call. He nodded and said, "Do you feel better now?" I thought for a moment. "I think I feel lighter." "Good," he said. Then he held my hand and said something he hadn't said in months. "I love you, Mira." Tears filled my eyes. "I love you too," I whispered. And this time, I meant it without any pain inside my heart. Time doesn't heal everything, but it teaches you how to live with it. It had been 6 months since Ria moved to another city. She hadn't contacted me again, and I hadn't tried to reach out either. Not because I was angry. Not anymore. But because I finally understood something important, that healing doesn't always mean going back to how things were. Sometimes it just means learning to breathe again, even with a scar. Arav and I were stronger now. Not perfect, but stronger. We had hard conversations, we shared more honestly, and we became more careful with each other's hearts. I started seeing him not just as a husband, but as someone who was also healing from his own confusion and guilt. We were both human, after all. And love, real love, is not about being flawless. It's about being willing to repair what's broken again and again. One evening, while we were cleaning the study, Arv found an old photo album. Inside were pictures from our wedding, vacations, birthdays, and yes, many with Ria. I sat beside him on the floor, flipping through the pages slowly. I expected the pain to return, but strangely, it didn't. Instead, I saw those pictures as memories of a time that existed, a chapter that had ended. And even if that chapter hurt me later, it also gave me years of joy. I pointed to one picture of Ria and me standing on a hill, both laughing, wind in our hair. That was such a happy day, I said. Arv nodded. It was. There was no awkwardness, no heavy silence. Just quiet acceptance. And that was when I knew I had truly moved on. Not just from the betrayal, but from the need to hold on to what no longer fit. A week later, I met an old college friend for lunch. She knew nothing about what had happened. She asked about Ria, assuming we were still close. I took a sip of my lemonade and said, "We grew apart." She looked surprised. "You two were like one person." I smiled gently. Maybe that was the problem. After lunch, I walked back home, thinking about that sentence. Yes, Ria and I had once been like one person. And for a long time, I thought losing her meant losing part of myself. But I had come to see the truth. I was still whole, even without her. My life was still full of love, strength, and beauty, even after she left. One evening, Arv and I went out for a walk. It had just rained, and the air smelled of wet earth and flowers. We held hands as we walked slowly through the park. "Do you think you've forgiven me?" he asked suddenly. I didn't answer right away. I looked up at the sky, soft, pink, fading into blue. Then I said, "I think forgiveness is a process. Some days I feel it fully. Some days I have to choose it again." He squeezed my hand gently. "I'll keep choosing you. Every day." I smiled. "Me too." A few weeks later, I got a message from a mutual friend. She told me that Ria had started teaching art classes to children. That she had adopted a dog. That she seemed calmer, more settled, more herself. I didn't know why, but that message brought tears to my eyes. I didn't reply, but I silently wished Ria well. I hoped she was healing in her own way. I hoped she had learned, like I had, that love without boundaries becomes confusion. That closeness without respect becomes danger. And that guilt, if carried too long, becomes poison. It wasn't my job to teach her those things anymore. And that was okay. Some people come into your life to walk with you. Some come to teach you. And some come to break you, so that you can build yourself again, this time stronger. That night, I sat by the window with a notebook and wrote a letter I would never send. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was just full of peace. Dear Ria, thank you for the years of friendship. Thank you for the laughs, the support, the memories. And thank you, even for the pain. Because through it, I learned how strong I am. I learned what boundaries mean. I learned how to love myself again. I don't know if we'll ever meet again. But if we do, I hope we can smile at each other without the weight of the past. I wish you healing. I wish you growth. And above all, I wish you peace. Mira, I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the old birthday cards. Not to hold on to it, but to remember that even the deepest wounds can become soft stories someday. As time passed, I began sharing my story with others. Quietly, carefully, with women who felt confused, broken, lost. I didn't share the details, but I spoke about friendship, about trust, about rebuilding your life after someone you love hurts you. And each time I did, I felt lighter, like I was turning pain into something useful. Arv and I eventually moved to a new home. A smaller place, closer to my school. We planted flowers in the balcony, painted the bedroom blue, bought a bookshelf we both loved. We built new routines, created new memories. We laughed more. I don't know if we'll ever meet again. But if we do, I hope we can smile at each other without the weight of the past. I wish you healing. I wish you growth. And above all, I wish you peace. Mira, I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the old birthday cards. Not to hold on to it, but to remember that even the deepest wounds can become soft stories someday. As time passed, I began sharing my story with others. Quietly, carefully, with women who felt confused, broken, lost. I didn't share the details,